All right, so you're going to be the first person I'm going to interview today. So if you could say who you are and who you work for.
I am Lhotka and I work for Magenic.
And you actually were not going to be here today when we
That
first put the schedule together. For various reasons, your schedule opened up. And we had somebody drop out at the last minute yesterday, so that's why you're here.
that's true.
So what are you actually speaking on today?
I'm not sure. Oh yeah, that's what the MVVM design pattern.
All of a sudden, the owner's getting very scared. The runner of the event's shaking right now. What is he doing? So what is it?
The model view model design pattern.
Which, of course, you're very much against, right?
I am dead set against it, except that I use it all the time.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So it's not just MVVM, though, for you, right? Because it's also how it works with CSLA.
Well,
Or
yeah, I think there's a bunch more to it because MVVM is a relatively unknown pattern.
Right.
I was going to say young, but I guess it's been around for a while. Just nobody ever paid any attention to it. And so there's a lot of interpretations on how to use it, and several of them don't meet my criteria, which is that if I'm going to use a pattern, it had better make my life easier and save me code.
Okay.
If it makes me write more code and makes life harder, it's not a net win.
All right.
And so yeah, I'm going to talk about it in the context of CSLA, but also in the context of I think there are ways to use this pattern that are particularly good and make life better for the UI developer, for the business developer, and for the designer. And I think there are ways to use it badly too, and so that's really kind of what I want to talk about.
Well, I think we were talking offline that a pattern can't prevent a bad developer from doing things badly. But
That's true.
you just alluded to something really quick, which is this also helps UI designers. Because one thing we were talking about earlier this week is that by using this pattern, you could potentially eliminate all code behind from all of your XAML files. Potentially or did I misinterpret what you said earlier this week?
No.
Okay.
So to me, that was a goal. And if you look out there and read a lot of blogs about this, there's a lot of people that say that eliminating code behind is not a goal of MVVM.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, okay. But it is a goal of mine, primarily because if there's no code behind the XAML, then it lets the designer have a lot more freedom. And by designer, I mean the graphic designer that's going to use Blend or whatever and manipulate and rearrange all this XAML to make your UI look good.
And also have all the rectangles all nice and curved, right?
Well, they got to have curved everything, at least at the moment.
Yeah.
So I guess that's. I started with the MVVM pattern with a set of preconceptions, and in fact, 4 months ago or so, probably wrote a blog post where I was pretty critical of it because, based on what I'd seen and the implementations I'd seen at the time, I thought it was terrible. And because it was increased the amount of work I had to do and didn't get rid of code behind, and basically it seemed like it wasn't doing any good for me. And that's where I come back to. I think if you add some extra goals to it, then you can use the MVVM pattern, probably eliminate all code behind, at least in most cases, and it does in fact, at best, it requires no more code than what you would have written if you were just going to do event handlers, which is probably the kind of the default mode for any UI developer is to build the UI, double-click on a button, and then write code in the click handler, right?
Yeah. Okay. So the last question is, and I asked this because I used CSLA once in my life, and that was like 2 or 3 years ago when I wrote my own blog engine. And I was like, the thing I liked about it is that you could actually do the physical separation of tiers. I could test it on my box, and then just by, like you said, just one line in a config file, and boom, it's local. It's local, and now also on my web server, which is really cool. And then I'm starting to use this on the project I'm right now, and I went, wow. There's like a ton of stuff that made things so. I mean, because I was kind of on the fence a little bit, but now I'm like, wow, this actually does make things a lot easier. The managed the properties thing, that is a real nice addition. So if you can give like a quick summary of what's in CSLA as of recently that does make things easier if you're doing business object development? I know it's a big thing to ask, but if you could sum it up, like what are some key things?
Well, I think the big thing is that in about 2.5 years, 3 years ago, when I created CSLA 3.5, that was to support all the .NET 3.0 features in a really solid way, and it was in preparation for Silverlight, even though Silverlight wasn't out yet. And but even more than that, my primary focus was on code reduction, because by the point that we got up to 2006 or so, CSLA did a lot of stuff, but it required that you write a lot of code.
Okay.
Every property was like 16 lines of code or something.
Yeah.
And like, okay, even with a snippet or something, this is getting crazy. And so following Microsoft's lead with dependency properties, I invented a similar syntax that I call managed properties, that reduces that down to roughly 4 or 5 lines of code per property, and it's always the same lines of code. So a snippet works perfectly, and you can crank out properties. Literally in like 5 seconds, you can create a property, and there's a whole bunch of other things that let me do, because the framework now has more control over your property values, and therefore it can automate more things like tracking whether your object has been changed, and managing how parent-child objects get updated into the database, and basically let the framework be an awful lot smarter, and therefore in most cases reduces your code to maybe about 30% of what it used to be.
Okay, so here's the last question, because it just came to my head. Because you've been writing, I know you did CSLA before .NET, but you've been in this space for what now, 10, 15 years, something like that?
Something like that.
Yeah. I'm guessing that there's probably some stuff that's in CSLA that's still there because it was there originally, and you don't necessarily want to rip it out because there may be some people using it. I guess because you're basically a framework designer owner, have you actually done some ripping out of old stuff and deprecated and broke some people's code potentially because there's now an easier way to do it? So how do you do like the version management in CSLA, which would be interesting for framework implementers?
So this is a timely question, because there's a thread on the CSLA forum right now discussing what I should do or not do with CSLA 4.
Oh, okay.
And
which is targeting the .NET 4 framework.
Which is targeted at .NET 4, and of course .NET 4 is a big deal because it's a new CLR, and right.
Yep.
And so from CSLA 1 to CSLA 2 was a pretty major change. People had a hard time upgrading, or didn't, because I took that opportunity to change a lot of things. And I haven't done that since 2004.
Okay.
So CSLA 3, for instance, adds a bunch of new stuff, and 3.5 adds a bunch of new stuff, but all the old 2.1 stuff keeps working, at least for the most part. And so the question is now with CSLA 4, do I take a bigger plunge again and rip out, because you're right, there's a bunch of stuff in there that at least I don't use. I know a lot of people do, but I don't. It's stuff that I thought was great 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think there's better ways now, and that's so there's a strong lobby on the forum to essentially start over, right? And
okay.
Like really just rip out all the old. Don't support Windows forms. Maybe not even web forms.
Wow.
Only do Silverlight, WPF, and ASP MVC.
That's actually pretty harsh. Wow.
I'm not sure I'm going there.
Well, I know that like Allende with Rhinomox, he's kind of doing the same thing. He's debating in 4 whether to rip out the whole expect and other stuff, because he's really focused on the arrange, act, assert pattern that you do now in Rhinomox and the stubbing stuff. And so he's just wondering, do I take out all the stuff that used to be there, which kind of actually turned me off to Rhinomox when I first saw it. And now with the AAA thing, it's really cool. So I can see where now you go, well, if I keep this in there, that might actually not encourage, but it's still there to encourage old ways of doing it, which if you do make the jump, that may irk some people, but it does force them to go to a better way, potentially.
Yeah. Well, And that's exactly right, and it reduces my burden because I've got a support and maintenance burden in that I add a new feature and I have to figure out how to make the old features keep working reasonably well. So if I could cut out some of the older code, it would simplify my life as well.
Well, my vote is to move ahead, but that's just me. So, all right. So thank you, Rocky. I appreciate it.
Thank you.